Jocko manipulates the control stick of his standard spaceship as it glides through the silent vacuum of Space Sector 44. The cockpit monitors flash with sharp crimson warning lights, while a long-range scanner sweeps across a completely dark, derelict patrol cruiser drifting dead in the void. Jocko checks the life support telemetry on his secondary screen, finding absolutely zero signs of organic life remaining on the ghost vessel. He reports into his primary communicator, logging that Vanguard Squadron 7 has ceased all transmissions without deploying any defensive distress beacons. As his ship approaches the docking airlock of the silent vessel, a sudden pulse of metallic energy ripples across his main viewing screen, short-circuiting his secondary navigation sensors and leaving him momentarily blind in the deep dark. Jocko manually overrides the pneumatic docking clamp mechanisms, forcing his ship to couple with the frozen outer hull of the derelict cruiser. He steps through the pressurized seal into the absolute darkness of the vessel's main corridor, where the internal atmospheric temperature has plummeted far below freezing. Senses alert, Jocko unholsters his laser pistol and sweeps the beam of his handheld flashlight across the metallic floor plates, noting strange, microscopic silver tracks that resemble liquefied circuitry. He follows the glistening residue toward the command bridge, his steps clicking softly against the ice-crusted metal. The silence breaks when a low, rhythmic thumping sound echoes from the engine room below, indicating that something mechanical is still drawing power from the primary reactor, despite the total absence of the crew. Jocko moves cautiously down the lower utility decks, tracking the source of the mechanical vibration with his portable scanning device. The screen of his handheld tracker flickers wildly, displaying an impossible energy signature that alternates between organic life and highly advanced synthetic programming. He reaches the engine room doors, which have been melted open from the inside out, leaving jagged edges of slagged metal dripping onto the floor. Inside the reactor core chamber, Jocko observes a pulsating, liquid metal mass attached directly to the main fuel cells, absorbing the raw energy while spinning thin, wire-like filaments throughout the entire internal structure of the ship. The metallic mass shifts suddenly, sensing his presence, and hurls several razor-sharp tendrils directly toward his position, forcing him to leap backward into the corridor as the doorframe is shredded by the impact. Across the cosmos on Earth, the same localized electronic distortion registers on the central supercomputers inside Capsule Corporation. Bulma taps frantically on her primary diagnostic terminal, trying to isolate a massive data corruption that is rapidly spreading through the global satellite network. She notices that the global tracking system is simultaneously experiencing a severe power drain, with several vital telemetry indicators blinking erratically before vanishing entirely from her display. Android 18 stands nearby, watching the screens flicker and explaining that she feels a faint, artificial prickling sensation in her own internal power core, as if something is attempting to ping her cybernetic systems from a remote source. Bulma warns her to remain vigilant while she attempts to lock down the main server banks before the anomalous signal completely compromises the company's defensive infrastructure. Bulma activates the auxiliary power generators, bypassing the main city grid to isolate the laboratory from the creeping electronic blackouts affecting the surrounding streets. The backup monitors immediately hum to life, revealing that the strange data drain is originating from a specific subterranean point beneath the city's commercial district, rather than an external satellite hack. Android 18 focuses her internal tracking systems toward the coordinates indicated on the display, confirming that a strange, rhythmic vibration is pulsing through the bedrock deep below the ground. She tells Bulma that she intends to investigate the subterranean source directly before the interference can spread to the residential sectors. Bulma hands her an isolated, hardwired data reader, instructing her to connect it to any anomalous machinery she discovers so they can analyze the invasive code. Android 18 launches herself through the reinforced laboratory skylight, soaring into the air over the city as evening begins to fall. She observes that the city lights are flickering rhythmically, matching the exact frequency of the subterranean energy pulses she detected on the monitors inside the lab. Below her, several automated transit vehicles grind to a sudden halt, their electronic displays blanking out and replacing their standard routes with a repeating, unrecognizable language script composed of geometric lines. Android 18 descends rapidly toward an abandoned subway access tunnel that leads directly toward the underground coordinates, her energy shield flaring slightly as she passes through an intensifying field of electromagnetic resistance. Farther out in the mountain ranges beyond the city limits, Gohan stands in a clearing near his home, looking down as Pan practices her flight stabilization. Pan hovers 3 feet off the ground, concentrating hard as she maintains her balance against a sudden, unnaturally cold wind sweeping down from the peaks. Piccolo stands a few paces away, his arms crossed as he senses a sudden, abrupt shift in the natural wildlife, noting that the birds and forest animals have completely vanished into hiding. Gohan blinks as his smartphone suddenly bursts into static, the screen displaying the same geometric script that is currently infecting the city's network. Piccolo uncrosses his arms and warns Gohan and Pan that the energy descending upon the mountains does not belong to any ordinary living fighter, describing it as an empty, suffocating pressure. Pan drops back to her feet as a heavy, metallic crash echoes from the dense forest just beyond the clearing. Gohan steps in front of her, focusing his attention as several wild boars emerge from the tree line, though their movements are stiff, helical, and accompanied by the sound of grinding gears. The animals' eyes glow with an artificial crimson light, and metallic, silver tendrils protrude from beneath their skin, twisting around their muscles like synthetic parasites. Piccolo charges a small spark of energy in his fingertips, explaining that these creatures are no longer completely organic and are acting under an external collective consciousness. The infected wildlife charges forward with explosive, mechanical speed, forcing Piccolo to leap into action to intercept the leading beast before it can reach Pan. Piccolo delivers a swift, descending strike that pins the infected boar to the dirt, but the creature's synthetic tendrils instantly lash out, wrapping around his wrist and attempting to burrow into his skin. Gohan powers up, transforming immediately into Super Saiyan to unleash a sharp ki that blasts the remaining mechanical beasts away from Piccolo and Pan. Piccolo tears his arm free from the silver filaments, noting with grim focus that the liquid metal tried to override his nervous system the moment it made physical contact. Pan watches safely from behind a nearby boulder, crying out a warning as more infected creatures, including mutated forest bears with exposed metallic endoskeletons, begin to encircle the perimeter of the clearing. Gohan shifts into a defensive stance, realizing that they must contain this outbreak immediately before it spreads to the nearby towns. Gohan unleashes a series of precise ki blasts, vaporizing the synthetic tendrils holding the mutated bears without permanently harming the base organic animals beneath. Piccolo moves in perfect synchronization, using his extended arms to bind the thrashing creatures, while Gohan uses localized energy fields to neutralize the metallic parasites. Despite their efficiency, the silver liquid dripping from the disabled creatures begins to pool together on the grass, flowing uphill against gravity as if guided by a magnetic force toward the center of the mountain. Piccolo tracks the moving liquid with his gaze, stating that a larger concentration of this substance must be nesting deeper within the mountain range. Gohan tells Piccolo to protect Pan, while he prepares to follow the trail into the wilderness. Meanwhile, back within the commercial sectors of the city, Trunks and Goten are navigating through a dense industrial warehouse district on foot. They are investigating a tip regarding a hidden storage facility previously owned by a defunct subsidiary of the old Red Ribbon Army. Trunks holds a handheld tracking device that had been given to him earlier, which is currently emitting a steady, high-pitched beep as they approach an unmarked steel shutter door. Goten whispers that the air in this sector smells heavily of ozone and burnt copper, indicating that heavy machinery has been operating here very recently. Trunks uses his physical strength to quietly slide the steel shutter upward, revealing a dark, descending ramp that leads into a highly advanced, unauthorized technological complex. Trunks and Goten slip into the facility, closing the shutter behind them to avoid detection by any surface patrols. The corridors are lined with glowing blue data conduits, all of which are pumping immense amounts of electrical power down toward the lowest levels of the sub-basement. Goten points to a series of automated assembly lines that are completely active, producing rows of small, spherical metallic pods that match the descriptions of the parasites currently attacking the mountains. Trunks examines a central computer console, reading through automated logs that mention an extraterrestrial entity known as Dr. Myuu and his blueprints for total organic restructuring. Trunks alerts Goten that this facility is actively transmitting these cybernetic pods across the globe through a network of hidden pneumatic tubes. Before Goten can respond, a computerized security alarm blares through the corridors, and the assembly line ceases its production to reconfigure its automated defenses. Several heavy, bipedal defense droids roll out from the walls, their arms transforming into high-caliber energy blasters aimed directly at the intruders. Trunks commands Goten to hold the line while he attempts to download the main server files onto his portable drive. Goten steps forward, raising his hands to catch the first barrage of incoming plasma fire, his feet sliding back an inch against the concrete floor as the impact echoes through the bunker. Trunks works rapidly against the security firewall, watching the download progress bar tick up slowly while the droids advance. Far above the mortal plane, within the sacred world of the Kai, Shin stands beside a pristine crystal pool, peering intently into its reflecting waters. Kibito approaches him with an expression of deep concern, holding an ancient cosmic ledger that tracks the balance of souls across Universe 7. Shin explains that a bizarre, unprecedented distortion has manifested on Earth, describing how mortal souls are being suppressed and integrated into a synthetic collective network rather than passing into the afterlife upon physical death. Kibito expresses alarm, stating that such an artificial anchoring of spirits threatens the foundational laws of reincarnation oversaw by King Yema. Shin raises his hand, focusing his divine perception to pierce through the spatial layers, seeking the cosmic origin point of this unnatural, parasitic virus. Shin gasps as his divine sight connects with an ancient, long-forgotten sector of space, far outside the jurisdiction of standard galactic tracking. He witnesses a massive, mechanical planetoid, drifting silently through the dark, its surface shifting like living tissue, under the guidance of Dr. Myuu. Inside the core of that distant machine world, Shin glimpses a developing bioorganic embryo that pulses with an insatiable hunger for Saiyan life energy, identified in the ancient texts as Baby. Kibito asks if they should immediately contact Lord Beerus, but Shin shakes his head, noting that the deity is currently asleep and that the infection is spreading too rapidly on Earth to wait for divine intervention. Shin determines that they must provide immediate support to the mortal defenders before the planet's collective life force is completely converted. Shin places his hand on the shoulder of Kibito, preparing to utilize his instant teleportation technique to manifest directly on Earth. Before he can execute the movement, a sudden, powerful shockwave of negative energy erupts from the crystal pool, shattering the reflective water surface into thousands of floating droplets. The negative energy coalesces into a projection of Dr. Myuu, who laughs mechanically and warns Shin and Kibito that their interference has already been accounted for in his calculations. The projection unleashes a binding field of cybernetic code that wraps around the sacred tree roots of the realm, temporarily disrupting Shin and his ability to safely lock onto Earth's dimensional coordinates. Kibito immediately unleashes his divine key to burn away the invasive data strands, urging Shin to maintain his focus despite the cosmic ambush. Back in Space Sector 44, Jocko fires his laser pistol repeatedly into the thrashing metallic tendrils that have overrun the derelict patrol ship's engine room. The energy beams blast chunks out of the liquid metal mass, but the substance reforms almost instantly, drawing more power from the reactor core to increase its size. Jocko realizes his standard weaponry is entirely ineffective against this synthetic parasite, so he turns and flees back up the icy corridor toward the docking bay. He uses his communicator to broadcast a high-frequency emergency warning to Galactic Patrol headquarters, detailing how the ship's crew was completely consumed and converted into raw biological fuel for the machine entity. His transmission is cut short as a massive surge of cybernetic static floods the communications channel, overriding his ship's main transmitter. Jocko dives into the cockpit of his own spaceship, just as the primary airlock of the derelict vessel completely collapses under the pressure of the growing metallic mass. He slams his hand onto the ignition switch, forcing the thrusters to fire at maximum capacity to break the mechanical hold of the liquid metal tendrils wrapping around his landing gear. The ship breaks free with a violent jolt, rocketing away into the void, as the entire patrol cruiser behind him turns into a glowing metallic chrysalis. Jocko checks his navigation maps, realizing that the automated trajectory of the infected vessel has altered, aligning itself directly toward the solar system containing Earth. He works frantically to bypass the communications dampener, knowing he must warn the planet's defenders before the ghost ship enters their orbital sector. At Capsule Corporation, Bulma watches her main control panel turn completely dark as the primary mainframe succumbs to the subterranean data drain. She grabs an emergency satellite phone, attempting to establish a line to the Galactic Patrol through their dedicated subspace channel, only to receive a deafening wall of digital static. Outside her window, the sky over the city begins to glow with an eerie, rhythmic purple hue as the infected power grid channels energy into the upper atmosphere. Bulma realizes that the localized blackouts were merely a calibration phase for a massive citywide transmission array being assembled beneath the streets. She runs to her secondary workshop, retrieving a prototype electromagnetic pulse device that she had originally designed to neutralize rogue cybernetic technology. Deep within the subway access tunnels beneath the city, Android 18 walks through the darkness, her internal sensors guiding her toward the lowest drainage vaults. She stops as she encounters a massive wall of living, silver biofabric that has completely blocked the tracks, pulsating in sync with the city's power grid above. Several discarded security drones are embedded within the mass, their components being dismantled and reassembled into small, skittering mechanical insects that swarm around her feet. Android 18 raises her hand, generating a concentrated energy sphere that illuminates the dark tunnel with a brilliant yellow radiance. She warns the hidden intelligence behind the wall that she will not allow her home to be repurposed into a machine scrap heap, unleashing the blast directly into the center of the silver mass. Inside the hidden Red Ribbon sub-basement, Goten powers up, transforming immediately into Super Saiyan to smash through the defensive line of bipedal droids with a series of heavy, physical strikes. The shattered metal pieces of the droids attempt to crawl back together, but Goten stomps on the central processors, neutralizing their recovery systems completely. Trunks shouts that the data download is finally complete, pulling the portable drive from the main console, just as the laboratory's self-destruct sequence activates. The walls begin to rupture, releasing a massive flood of the liquid metal parasite from the overhead containment vats to submerge the entire room. Trunks transforms instantly into Super Saiyan, grabbing Goten by the shoulder as they prepare to blast their way vertically through the concrete ceiling to escape the drowning trap. Trunks and Goten combine their energy, unleashing a twin ki blast upward that incinerates the concrete layers and opens a direct path to the surface. They rocket through the opening, bursting into an abandoned industrial alleyway, just as the sub-basement below detonates in a flash of silver fire. They land heavily on the asphalt, breathing hard as they watch the liquid metal residue from the explosion sink rapidly into the city's sewer grates, joining the larger collective network below. Trunks checks the data drive in his hand, noting that the extracted files contain a global map of underground nodes that are all connected to a single central hub located beneath Mount Paozu. Goten realizes that Gohan and Pan are in immediate danger, and both immediately take flight, racing toward the Capsule Corporation headquarters to deliver the data map to Bulma. Back in the sacred world of the Kai, Shin maintains his meditative stance, using his divine energy to slowly cleanse the sacred tree roots from Dr. Myu's cybernetic corruption. Kibito stands guard, channeling his own spiritual power to shield the crystal pool from further external manipulation by the machine mutant forces. Shin opens his eyes, stating that the disruption has lessened enough for him to re-establish a stable dimensional lock on Earth's current coordinates. He realizes, however, that the parasitic entity Baby has already launched a massive vanguard fleet of infected machine shells from its distant galaxy, heading straight for the mortal world. Shin tells Kibito that he must go to Earth immediately to deliver the strategic data regarding the parasite's core biological weaknesses before the fleet arrives. With a swift flash of divine light, Shin teleports away from the sacred world, manifesting directly on the roof of the Capsule Corporation main building. He is immediately met by Bulma, who is carrying her prototype electromagnetic pulse device toward her transport vehicle. Shin warns her that the situation is far more perilous than a simple terrestrial technological failure, explaining that an ancient alien bioweapon is actively seeking to claim Earth as its new breeding ground. Bulma absorbs the information quickly, showing Shin her diagnostic monitors, which indicate that the subterranean nodes across the globe are reaching maximum synchronization capacity. Shin offers to guide Bulma toward the primary mountain node, using his divine senses, recognizing that their separate investigations have led them to the exact same threat. Deep within the craggy peaks of Mount Paozu, Gohan follows the glistening trail of silver liquid as it winds through a narrow rocky canyon. The air grows increasingly thick with an unnatural metallic fog that dampens his key sensing abilities, forcing him to rely strictly on his physical senses. Behind him, Piccolo maintains a protective barrier around Pan, who watches the surrounding cliffs with a mixture of awe and growing apprehension. The rocky walls around them begin to sweat with the liquid metal substance, the stone itself dissolving and reconfiguring into geometric, metallic architecture that mirrors the design of the derelict ship in space. Gohan stops as the canyon path opens into a massive, hollow cavern, where a towering cybernetic spire has grown directly out of the earth. The cybernetic spire pulses with a blinding crimson light, casting long, eerie shadows across the cavern walls as it draws immense power from the Earth's tectonic lines. Piccolo sets Pan down behind a reinforced rock formation, warning her to stay absolutely still while he and her father confront the structure. Suddenly, the liquid metal on the cavern floor rises up, shaping itself into solid, faceless humanoid drones that mirror the physical builds of the galactic patrolmen consumed in Sector 44. Gohan charges his energy, his aura flaring brightly as he leaps forward to strike the first wave of drones before they can completely materialize. His physical blows shatter the metallic shells, but the pieces instantly liquefy and flow back toward the central spire, fueling its rapid growth. The ground shatters as Android 18 bursts through the cavern ceiling from the underground subway network, landing precisely between Gohan and the pulsating spire. She informs them that the entire city grid has been hijacked to feed this specific mountain node, and that her individual strikes in the tunnels only cause the network to reroute its power here. Piccolo joins the front line, stating that they are dealing with a self-repairing collective intelligence that thrives on standard energy absorption. From the shadows of the spire, a distorted mechanical voice echoes through the cavern, identifying itself as the voice of Dr. Myuu speaking through his Earthside terminal. The voice declares that the era of flesh is nearing its absolute end, and that the Saiyan bloodlines present will serve as the perfect genetic foundation for his ultimate creation. Meanwhile, back at the Capsule Corporation Command Center, Trunks and Goten touch down on the balcony, handing the extracted data drive directly to Bulma. Bulma quickly slots the drive into an isolated portable reader, analyzing the schematic overlays of the central spire's inner defensive shielding. She explains to Trunks and Goten that the spire possesses a minor frequency vulnerability that can be exploited if an electromagnetic shock is applied directly to its core. Trunks notes that they must get this information and the prototype device to the mountains immediately before the entire global network goes permanently offline. Goten prepares to fly out, but Bulma stops him, indicating that a massive atmospheric disruption is already forming directly over Mount Paozu. Shin steps forward on the balcony, placing his hands on the shoulders of Bulma, Trunks, and Goten to prepare for an immediate group teleportation. He warns them that his divine perception senses an imminent spatial breach directly above the cavern, indicating that the alien vanguard is accelerating its arrival. With a coordinated flash of light, Shin teleports Bulma, Trunks, and Goten directly into the mountain cavern, materializing safely behind the defensive rock formation where Pan is currently hiding. Bulma unloads the modified electromagnetic pulse device, showing it to Piccolo while explaining that they only have one opportunity to detonate the charge before the shield adapts to the frequency. Trunks and Goten immediately step up to reinforce the defensive line alongside Android 18. Gohan breathes heavily as the sheer number of metallic drones continues to multiply, their relentless pressure forcing him to push past his current limitations. He lets out a powerful roar, his aura expanding violently as he transforms into his ultimate state, the shockwave of his silver-white energy vaporizing the nearest wave of cybernetic attackers. Piccolo begins charging his energy, his posture tensing as he focuses his power into his fingertips for a final, decisive strike against the spire's outer barrier. Android 18 provides cover, launching a continuous stream of energy rings to bind the incoming drones while Trunks and Goten strike down any constructs that attempt to breach their flank. Gohan commands Piccolo, Android 18, Trunks, and Goten to unleash everything they have at the central shield to create an opening for the device. Piccolo fires his special beam cannon, the spiraling beam of piercing energy tearing through the fractures created by Android 18 and drilling directly into the plasma shield. The barrier shatters with a deafening explosion of light and sound, exposing the pulsating liquid metal core of the spire to the open air. Trunks and Goten immediately leap forward, using their combined strength to hold back the remaining defensive tendrils that are desperately trying to seal the breach. Shin uses his divine telekinesis to propel Bulma's electromagnetic pulse device directly into the exposed core, pinning it against the writhing, synthetic heart of the machine. Bulma uses her remote detonator to activate the countdown sequence, shouting for Gohan, Piccolo, Android 18, Trunks, and Goten to fall back immediately as the core begins to overload. Shin instantly grabs Bulma, Trunks, Goten, and Pan, utilizing his teleportation to vanish from the immediate blast zone back to the safety of Capsule Corporation. The electromagnetic pulse device detonates with a silent, blinding wave of blue distortion that expands outward through the entire mountain cavern system. The towering cybernetic spire groans as its internal circuitry is violently fried, the brilliant crimson light fading into a dull, lifeless gray as the collective network shatters. Across the mountains, the infected forest creatures collapse to the ground, the silver parasites dissolving into harmless, inert dust as their organic bodies are freed from external control. Gohan, Piccolo, and Android 18 shield their faces from the intense thermal backdraft, watching the crumbling spire closely as it collapses into slag. The relief is short-lived as a massive, dark shadow falls over the cavern opening, blotting out the evening sky as the derelict patrol ship enters Earth's lower atmosphere. Jocko pilots his damaged spaceship down right behind the giant vessel, firing his remaining automated lasers to draw its attention away from the populated city sectors below. The giant ghost ship, now completely encased in a hardened, biomechanical shell of living machine armor, hovers directly above Mount Paozu, its ventral hatches opening to deploy thousands of airborne parasite pods. Gohan looks upward with grim determination, realizing that the planetary node they just destroyed was merely a homing beacon to guide this massive invasion force directly to their position. Android 18 hovers into the air alongside Piccolo, her gaze locked onto the descending swarm of mechanical pods that are beginning to rain down upon the forest. With a sudden flash of light, Shin teleports back into the cavern alone, his expression filled with deep dread as he joins the remaining defenders. He informs Gohan that the primary consciousness of Baby is actively commanding this vessel from across the cosmic void, using the ship's massive reactor to bridge the spatial gap. Piccolo commands Jaco via short-range radio to maintain evasive maneuvers, while Piccolo, Gohan, Android 18, and Shin attempt to neutralize the airborne threat from the ground. Shin raises his hands, channeling his divine ki to create a massive protective barrier over the immediate mountain range, preventing the airborne parasites from scattering across the rest of the continent. Gohan ascends into the sky, his aura blazing with righteous fury as he prepares to meet the vanguard of the machine mutant army head-on. The biomechanical ghost ship unleashes a massive, concentrated beam of dark energy from its primary weapon array, striking Shin's divine barrier with catastrophic force. The impact creates a localized spatial distortion that ripples across the sky, shaking the tectonic plates beneath the mountains and forcing Piccolo to use his energy to stabilize the crumbling terrain. Android 18 flies directly into the path of the descending parasite pods, using rapid physical strikes and energy bursts to detonate the spheres before they can touch the ground. Inside the core of the hovering vessel, the mechanical voice of Dr. Myuu echoes through the communication frequencies, mocking the hero's efforts to protect a doomed world. Gohan charges a massive Kamehameha wave in his hands, targeting the ship's primary weapon core to put an end to the aerial bombardment. Gohan fires his full-power Kamehameha wave into the sky, the brilliant blue energy beam cutting through the dark cloud of parasites and striking the underbelly of the biomechanical ghost ship. The vessel rocks violently as the blast tears through its external plating, but the liquid metal hull immediately begins to regenerate, absorbing a portion of the energy to fuel its defense mechanisms. Far below, Shin strains against the immense pressure of the barrier, while Piccolo and Android 18 fight to contain the remaining airborne swarms from escaping into the wider world. In the distance, Jaco maneuvers his sputtering ship through the crossfire, desperate to establish a connection to the rest of the universe's defenders. With the true malice of Baby looming closer through the cosmic rift and Dr. Myu's army actively descending upon the planet, the heroes brace themselves against the mounting tide of a war that has only just begun.